There was a time when the shotgun was the answer. Before Instagram builds, before red dots on everything, before every rifle had a hand stop, a weapon light, and 3 different mounting systems. Home defense, shotgun.
Shotgun.
Property defense,
Shotgun.
something goes bump at 2 a.m.,
Shotgun.
grab the shotgun. The AR-15 existed. It just wasn't culturally dominant yet. Then the AR matured. Modularity exploded, optics became normal, weapon lights became standard, recoil became easy, capacity became effortless. And slowly the AR-15 didn't just join the conversation, it replaced the shotgun as the modern answer. Shotguns became the old school advice.
If you want to protect yourself, get a double-barrel shotgun. I promise you, who's ever coming in is not going to, you don't need an AR-15. It's harder to aim, it's harder to use, and in fact, you don't need 30 rounds to protect yourself.
Just get a shotgun. Usually from somebody who couldn't explain why.
I looked at it anyway. That's what I think my plan, I know what my plan does.
For a long time, that shift made sense. The AR was easier to shoot, easier to reload, easier to accessorize, easier to control for most people. It deserved its dominance. But here's the part that's interesting. Shotguns didn't stay frozen in time. They evolved quietly. And in 2026, they've closed the gap in ways that would have sounded crazy 15 years ago. Let's start with what used to be their biggest weakness. Handling. Old defensive shotguns were long and front heavy. You were basically maneuvering a telephone pole inside your hallway. 18-inch barrel, full stock, limited ergonomics. You felt it. Now look at something like the IWI Tavor TS12. Bullpup configuration. 18.5-inch barrel performance in a 28-inch overall length, 15 rounds of 12 gauge on board. That is compact authority. That's a shotgun designed around maneuverability, not hunting tradition. That alone changes the conversation. Then take the Mossberg 940 Pro Tactical. Competition heritage, gas system tuned for speed, oversized control, beveled loading port, 8-round tube, optics ready receiver. That's not a shotgun trying to survive in a rifle world. That's a shotgun competing in it. And you feel it when you run one. It cycles faster than older semi-autos ever did. It feels intentional, purpose-built. Now let's talk about the shotgun that really surprised me in terms of direction. The Mossberg 990 Aftershock. Short-barreled shotguns have been around forever, but they were crude, they were pump guns, harsh recoil, limited refinement, more intimidation tool than precision instrument. The 990 Aftershock changes that energy. Semi-auto, compact, refined. It's not just chopped, it's engineered. Now, is it a true PDW? Not quite. It's still 12 gauge, it still has mass. It's not disappearing into a backpack like a short carbine might, but for the first time, we're seeing a shotgun enter that compact defensive conversation in a serious way. And that matters because for decades, shotguns had zero presence in that space. Now, they at least have a seat at the table. That is evolution, my friends.
My friend.
All right, before we go any further, let me pivot for a second, because if we're talking about how shotguns have modernized, how they've refined ergonomics, controls, speed, then the way you train should evolve too. And that's where the G-Code Scorpion Assaulter system comes in. Now, here's why I actually use it. When I'm running drills, especially transitioning between rifle and pistol, the last thing I want is gear shifting, sagging, or fighting me. This belt locks in. The operator's belt stays planted on your waist. It doesn't rotate, it doesn't collapse, it doesn't feel flimsy. That matters when you're moving. The Scorpion mag carriers are one of those things you don't fully appreciate until you've used bad ones. They retain the magazine securely, pistol or rifle, but re-indexing is smooth. You're not forcing it, you're not fishing for the slot. It just seats cleanly. And the holster I'm running is their level 3 retention setup, which for me is about confidence. You can move hard, you can run hard, you can bend, sprint, get in and out of vehicles, and your firearm isn't going anywhere unless you intentionally defeat the retention system. That's the difference between range gear and real training gear. And look, I'm not saying everybody needs a belt setup, but if you're actually putting reps in, if you're actually running your equipment instead of just talking about it, having a stable, purpose-built system makes a difference. Everything is made in the US and backed by a lifetime warranty, which basically means if you somehow manage to destroy it, that's their problem, not yours. If you want to check it out, the link's in the description section. Now, back to why the shotgun world is finally catching up. Now, let's talk about the bridge between eras, the Benelli M4. If you want to understand how shotguns never completely fell off during the AR boom, look at the M4. Argo system, dual short-stroke pistons, battle-proven reliability. The Marines didn't adopt it because it looked cool. They adopted it because it ran. The M4 wasn't flashy, it was durable, steel receiver, overbuilt bolt, reliable across environments. It was the first real signal that semi-auto defensive shotguns could be serious fighting tools, not range toys. But the M4 represents the beginning of refinement. The Beretta 1301 represents acceleration. Blink gas system, ridiculous cycling speed, factory optic support, optimized ergonomics. The Mossberg 940 represents competition bleeding into defense. The A300 Ultima Patrol represents legacy platforms modernized intelligently. The 990 Aftershock represents compact experimentation. And the Genesis Gen 12, that represents acknowledgement. Acknowledgement that the AR platform dominated for a reason. So instead of fighting that, Genesis said, fine, let's merge it. AR lower, AR trigger, AR grip, AR stock, mag-fed 12 gauge. Now you're not retraining your brain from scratch. You're adapting. That dramatically narrows the usability gap. And that's what this entire evolution is about, usability. For years, the AR's biggest advantage wasn't just recoil, it was ergonomics, ease of reload, ease of manipulation, ease of mounting accessories. Now shotguns have optics rails standard. Now shotguns have oversized charging handles. Now shotguns have beveled loading ports. Now shotguns are balanced better. Shotguns are smoother cycling. That's not small, that is catching up. Now let's talk about performance honestly. 12 gauge buckshot inside realistic defensive distances has always been devastating.
Get shot with a shotgun, it ain't like the movies. You go to the hospital with a chunk of dirty plastic in your guts.
That's not new. What is new is how refined that devastation feels. Modern gas systems tame recoil better than older designs. Stocks are adjustable. Length of pull can be tailored. Balance has improved. The gun doesn't feel like it's fighting you the way older defensive shotguns did, but we need to be grown about this. Recoil is still real. That stopping power comes at a cost, and you have to train to manage it. Patterning matters. Every shotgun pattern's different. Different barrel, different chokes, different loads. They are not magical room-clearing devices. You still aim, you still control, you still train. The difference is in 2026, the shotgun platform itself is no longer the limiting factor. That's the shift. It's no longer shotguns are good if you can handle them. Now it's shotguns are modern systems that reward training. That's a big difference. Now let's talk role. Are shotguns replacing AR-15s as PDWs? No. Even the 990 Aftershock, as impressive as it is, isn't truly living in that ultra-compact rifle space. But for home defense, estate defense, property defense, where concealability isn't the primary concern, shotguns are absolutely contenders. Not nostalgia picks, not FUD defaults, contenders. The AR-15 still wins in recoil management for most people. It still wins in raw capacity. It still wins in ease of reload under stress. But the gap in ergonomics, smaller. The gap in accessory support, smaller. The gap in speed, smaller. The gap in compact handling, smaller. And that's the headline. Not the AR is dead, not shotguns are superior. The real story is that the shotgun renaissance is real, and it's driven by competition influence, military validation, ergonomic modernization, optics integration, AR pattern adaptation, and smart engineering. In 2026, you can legitimately choose between a well-set-up AR-15 and a refined semi-auto shotgun without sounding outdated. That's progress, that's evolution. And that's a much more interesting conversation than platform tribalism. The shotgun didn't replace the AR, it caught up. And that changes everything. Train accordingly.
Anyway, we're going to get a lot done.